Serious people who have hallucinated from mental illness/drugs, what was the strangest or scariest hallucination you've ever had? I was quite sick with the flu a few years back. Had some prescribed meds and tried to go to bed to sleep. I kept hearing this scratching and an awful, low-toned, loud huff. Living in AUS, I assumed it was a possum. Until I saw someone trying to climb in through my window. Blood coming out from its eyes and this horrible wet garbage kind of smell. I don't remember much after this other than being woken up by my BF, who found me curled up in a corner under my doona. While manic, I hallucinated a person standing in the dark in my living room. It was creepy because I lived alone. I walked right through this person, which is how I knew they weren't real. That, and they didn't move or say anything. Plus, I was manic and didn't care. It was a pretty trippy time. It wasn't the first or last time I saw something that wasn't there. I'd see spiders a lot. I don't know why. I'd put my hand through them. Most of them. Some spiders were actually there. Ha! But I'm feeling much better now. Seriously though, I haven't been manic in many years. I'm on good meds and I'm glad of it because I totally don't miss those days. A demon figure standing outside my front door watching me at night. Not moving, just watching me. Shadows were radiating from the figure. It was terrifying. I thought I lost my mouth and spent a solid 5 minutes panicking and trying to stick my tongue through my cheek to try to make a hole. I knew I could breathe through my nose, but the sensation of not having a mouth hole was terrifying. I saw baby angels jumping over me that turned dark and demonic halfway through. They were laughing, and the laughs turned to buzzing when they became dark. I have schizophrenia BTW. I was once going to play basketball on acid, but when I picked up the ball, the seam opened up and it became a giant eyeball and blinked at me. Decided not to play basketball. Later looked into a mirror and sneezed, and my eye on the congested side of my face inflated to about the size of a bowling ball in the mirror. Only for the duration of the sneeze, thankfully. Everyone in my house had turned into zombies, and when they found out I was awake they would eat me and turn me. I locked myself in the bathroom and resolved to kill myself before they could get to me. Then someone sneezed, and my brain snapped back on and was like, oh, zombies don't do that, right? So I didn't hurt myself, but I was very scared still. Prize-winning combo of sleep deprivation, really lucid nightmares, depersonalization, and undiagnosed and untreated anxiety/paranoia. I had laughing skulls chasing me down on the streets of Amsterdam's red light district. How much did they charge? Nice. I hallucinate whenever I have a fever. When I was little I hallucinated that I was at my brother's play and everybody kept telling me I was in charge of the locomotive. Now one thing they don't tell you in school is that when you hallucinate there is sound. Lots of sound. Every 30 seconds a screeching locomotive would come up the stairs and into my room. It was as tall as me and it was endless. The weirdest thing is that it kept screaming the alphabet at me. That was some scary shit. I'm in recovery, so I have a lot of stories. Here are some. I took 24 Benadryl pills when I was a depressed teen. What I remember is it being super uncomfortable, like ants were crawling up my skin. I began to hallucinate and different people who I was imagining were coming into my room and talking to me, but I couldn't talk back. I visually remember my mom sitting next to me asking why? And I couldn't answer. I woke up the next day and was fine but had a horrible hangover from the pills. Overdosed on opiates. I remember doing the drugs and then my whole life flashed before my eyes. I had a vision of what my life could have been but wasn't. I was dying. But then I felt a presence and was at peace. 15 minutes later I wake up to 5 cops and an ambulance surrounding me. The highest I've ever been was when I ate mushrooms, did coke, and smoked a lot of dabs. When I was peaking on mushrooms I took a huge dab and snorted a line and oh my god. I went into my room and under my blankets and went into a different realm. I was trapped inside my head flying through what I can only describe something like space. I felt like I was a god and owned planets and could do whatever I wanted. 45 minutes goes by and I finally come out of my room and I think I'm the Antichrist. I looked in the mirror and I had horns and a tail. And staying up for 3 to 4 days on coke/meth and being super paranoid and seeing shadow people. I remember this one time I was up for 4 days and thought I was with all my friends and talking to them, but when I turned on the lights I was alone. Very creepy feeling. Glad I don't live like that anymore. A contorted figure licking my face and eyes. Sleep paralysis. My personal scary story. I was strung out on meth after days of being awake and I was hiking through the woods with my BF collecting rocks cause we made pendants. So we'd just walk, collect rocks, go through the woods. We're hiking through the woods, like 2 miles deep and it's 4 a.m. We would usually stray from each other a bit but never leave one another alone. Well, I'm off collecting rocks and I see my boyfriend kind of speed walk past me. So naturally I get up and start following him. He turned towards me, brushed against me and came so close to my face. Keep in mind I'm blind in one eye and have horrible night vision, but there was definitely someone there. I could feel his breath on me, and physically felt the presence of someone. He got closer to me and made a waving motion like, "Come on." It looked identical to my boyfriend at the time. But he didn't say anything, and ran past me up these concrete stairs off the trail we were on. It was dark and late in the middle of the woods, so I felt a little scared watching him run away from me. I started chasing him up the stairs and yelling up to him. I'm at the top of the stairs now, which were pretty long and steep. Suddenly I heard a voice behind me, and it was my actual boyfriend yelling up to me asking where the fuck I was going. I turned around, and there he actually was at the bottom of the stairs. I had a brief moment of insanity and looked back forward to where I had seen the figure. And nothing was there. I literally have never had a hallucination before this in my life, or any history of this. I wonder to this day if someone was actually there, like luring me into the woods to murder me, or if I just imagined it. It really was true most freakiest moment of my life. I clung to my BF the whole way home and literally have never forgotten it. I had a psychotic breakdown when I was 20 years old. I was a student at the university, working part-time, in love with someone who didn't love me back, had an eating disorder, a history of abuse, an obsession with spirituality, etc. Anyway, I finally broke. I was living in Chicago. It was summertime, and daylight. I hadn't slept much in days and I was on an exercise binge. I was walking to work when I collapsed from sheer exhaustion beneath a tree. I began hallucinating by communicating telepathically with the ants beneath the tree. They were showing me how they all work together for the greater good. Some concerned citizens called an ambulance. The next few hours were a blur. But I basically believed I was dying and communicating with God. I was released from the hospital and I went home. It gradually got worse throughout the day, until eventually I asked my aunt to take me to a psychiatric hospital where I admitted myself. I was given Seroquel, and that's when my hallucinations got really vivid and frightening. I was sharing a room with another girl. It was storming and nighttime by this point. I was scared. I looked over at her and her throat was slit open and blood was gushing out of her. I screamed and ran out of there. The nurses and staff were all laughing at me when I told them. One staff member threatened to shoot me. Another patient exposed himself to me. Every single person I looked at seemed unreal. Their eyes were glowing. I felt like I was literally in a nightmare and honestly thought I was going to die. It was by far the scariest thing I've ever been through. Eventually I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. I had 2 more severe episodes that same year. I finally got the right combination of medicines, moved from the city, began a healthier lifestyle, and haven't had any more episodes like that since. I'm 30 years old now. I have a son. I have another baby on the way. A loving partner. I'm about to finish my bachelor's, finally, in accounting. I live as normal of a life as one could live with such a severe mental illness. There's hope. On drugs, all of the sudden all my friends' faces seemed covered in blood, like they'd been crying blood tears. Everyone in the room was looking directly at me with blooded faces and eyes wide open, just staring at me intensely. I walked out of the room to try and collect myself, but when I was sitting on the toilet alone and I looked into the mirror, I saw somebody else's face instead of mine entirely. Luckily the bad trip only lasted for a few short minutes, and after that everything went fine, but yeah, acid is no joke. A duplicate of myself but with black hair. I was sick at the time and had a high fever. Standing, I froze in curiosity and he grabbed my head and slammed it down onto the toilet. I was found shortly after knocked out and now have a scar on my eyebrow from it. Luckily the hair covers it up mostly. I saw a Babadook shadow on the wall, looked like he was coming down my curved staircase into the basement towards me. I could hear the sounds he makes in the movie, I could even feel his presence. I ran into my room and hid for about 40 minutes, literally standing so quietly, holding my breath, listening to my heartbeat. Edit: this was on a lot of very well steeped, very well concentrated psilocybin tea. Was in hospital recovering from surgery, so I was on painkillers. The first night I woke up and there were 3 men in suits and pig masks standing at the end of my bed, just staring at me for a few minutes. Eventually I blinked and they were gone. Freaked me out.
I bite the head off a bat like a Mozzie. You got a problem, motherfucker, come and try me. I'm nothing like what you punk boys wanna embody. North,